Hey Eurovision fans, it's time for the second episode of my Eurovision Scoreboard series where I look at all the risers and fallers in the biggest Eurovision fan poll for Eurovision 2025. In this episode we're going from 19 countries all the way to 27 and I'm going to give you my analysis of how all the entries are affecting each other. So let's kiki. Hi, my name is Tom, I'm an Irish Eurovision analyst and you can find all of this stuff on my Eurovision channel. Very quick intro to Eurovision Scoreboard in case you don't know it. This is a fan app where you can rank your favorite songs in the contest right now. All the scores are added together and you get a leader table of who are the favorites in the community right now. A couple of things to note: you can vote for your own country. There's a recency bias. This is one part of the Eurovision community that favors up-tempo songs and female songs a bit more. And finally, this scoring system differs from the Eurovision. In Eurovision, you can vote for one country up to the limit allowed by your broadcaster. In this ranking system, you have to rank 10 songs. So a little bit of a difference there. With that in mind, let's go way back to when we only had 19 countries and the latest addition to the scoreboard was Azerbaijan. So you can see here all the countries ranked from 1st to 19th, the amount of points they have, and then this percentage of all points. If you add up all the points together, how much of that does this country own? And then this first column here, pure percentage points change. Why is that so difficult to say? Is just how that percentage has changed compared to the last graph. So for example here, Finland have 11%. In the last scoreboard when there were 18 countries, they had 11.1, so they've lost 0.1% of the total points. I'm putting in a second column this time to help you visualize that, roughly how many points that corresponds to. So in the example of Finland, they lost 0.1, which roughly corresponds to losing around 1,700 points. These two things will always be the same. And we can see here that the biggest losers from Azerbaijan joining was Armenia. Now there's two potential explanations for that. The first is that Armenia was the last country to join in the last graph, so we know that there's a recency bias that a country joins high and then eventually drops down a couple of places, so it could be partially because of that. Armenia losing 0.4%, around 5,600 points. I think the second reason as well is that Azerbaijanis coming in to rank their own song pretty high in the app. Keep in mind you can vote for your own song, are not giving any points to Armenia. So that's another reason why they're the biggest losers. We can also see Belgium losing 5,000 points and Italy losing around 5,000 points as well. Italy were also a recent addition to the scoreboard. They were the 17th country to enter, so possibly a little bit of that same effect with Italy. Belgium just seems to be losing a little bit of steam. They were one of the first 8 countries that we had on the scoreboard. They were as high as third way back when we had 8 countries, and we're very close to the lead, but now a lot of time has passed. The song is kind of not as much hot fresh news and it's dropping down. So yeah, those are the 3 countries losing points right now, but you can see there's actually one country gaining points, and that is Albania in second place, gaining around 2,400 points. So that could again be the Azerbaijanis coming in and really enjoying this Albanian sound. And actually Albania have closed the gap on Finland. So when there were 18 countries, they were 1.7% behind Finland, and now they've cut that down to 1.4%. So Albania catching up on Finland, and that's not a normal thing. Usually when a country joins, everybody loses points, so gaining points is very unusual. We can see some other countries not really affected either. Norway losing only around 5 points, losing some points to Azerbaijan coming in, but also gaining popularity as more and more people listen to the song. Smallest loser is Ukraine, only losing around 250 points. Again, I think the fans for Ukraine are pretty solid and loving the song. Okay, now let's go to the next column, which is relative points loss. I'll put the graph up here again so you can see, but this is what percentage of my points did I give up or gain since somebody new enters. So this one again should be bluest at the top and reddest down the bottom if things are normal. So we're looking for when that color pattern breaks. If it's more blue than expected, it means there's probably not a good connection. And if it's more red, it means there's probably a strong connection between the new song and the song that was already on the scoreboard. And again, we can see the biggest points loser here is almost 11% of their points that they had before. Not sure why Spain going down. Is there a bit of an overlap between Spain and Azerbaijan? I'm not sure. And the third biggest loser is Italy, losing 7.2%. Keep in mind now at this point in time, this was Ali. This was not Lucio Corsi. That news was yet to be announced. It's coming up in the next slide. So those are the 3 biggest losers. And again, gaining wise, we can see Albania gaining 1.8% of the points they had before, but they had so many points before that ends up being the hugest amount of anybody. And then the other very blue entries we can see down the bottom, Ukraine very blue, barely losing 1% of what they had before, and Norway losing almost literally nothing, losing 0% as well. Okay, at this point, let's have a little bit of a look at the spread right now. We can can see Finland at the top, bit of a plummet down to Albania, and then Greece, Malta, very much even Steven. A little bit of a drop down to Poland and Norway, also equal. And then we have quite a large drop down to Belgium. And then we have this plateau. Italy, Luxembourg, Latvia, Lithuania, and Spain, all super, super even. Spain only 6,000 points behind Italy, so very, very easy for them to jump up. We have another drop-down plateau in Armenia, Ireland, Ukraine, and Azerbaijan, and then down the bottom, Montenegro and Slovenia. So this just helps us visualize how close are people to overtaking who's in front of them. Because, for example, you can see there Luxembourg super, super close, whereas Italy are quite far away from overtaking Belgium. Okay, let's go to the next one now. And actually, we're staying at 19 countries. Let's fast forward to February 22nd. This was when it was announced that Ali was not going to represent Italy in Eurovision 2025, and he was replaced by Lucio Corsi. So really, really unusual situation. We don't get to see that often, where a song is changed and we can actually see where it was ranked and then replaced with another person. Eurovision Scoreboard a little bit premature here. They shouldn't have put Ali in because he hadn't confirmed he was going to Eurovision yet. In any case, Lucio coming in is a two-step process. First of all, it's Ali being removed, and then it's Lucio coming in. So these points changes, we don't know which is which. So we can see here that Italy dropping down 5 places. They lost 1.5% of the total points available, roughly corresponds to 8,000 points. So big drop from them, from 8th down to 13th. Relatively new into the scoreboard at that point as well, so a little bit of that recency bias wearing off as well. But this is really interesting that we've had a song swap. I've never seen this before in the scoreboard, and so we get a really good idea of where was Ali ranked before, because we can see at the top here is an absolute feeding frenzy. Ali leaving means that all of the countries in the top 6 are gaining a huge amount of points. You can see Finland gaining 3,600 points. So that implies that Ali was above Erica in many people's lists, and him leaving means that Erica moves up 1 place. Albania moving up left. It appears people who loved Ali also liked Finland and Greece, because these are the people who've benefited the most from him leaving, but then also from Lucio coming in. It's a little bit hard to discern which of the two it is. Belgium, interestingly, losing 1,500 points. Lithuania gaining 1,700 points, and they moved 3 spots up the table, up to 8th. Keep in mind they're part of that plateau region where we've got a lot of countries bunched up, so very easy for them to move up and down. And we can see Spain as well in 10th, also moving up 2 places. They're part of that peloton as well. They gained 1,500. Luxembourg not really gaining any, actually losing 94 points. There's 2 possibilities. Either not very many people had Ali above Luxembourg, so they didn't gain very many points from him leaving, or Lucio coming in overlaps with Luxembourg, and so they've dropped down, or they could cancel each other out. Yeah, there's 2 things to factor in here. Biggest loser here, losing, other than Italy, losing 1.5, is Estonia, losing 2,300 points. So that's really interesting to see that Estonia losing so much points. One other thing to note here is that this is only 9,000 people, because I had to take these scores before Iceland joined the table, and at that point only 9,000 people had updated their rankings. So there is also the fact that this is a lot less people, only around 40% of what we had last time. We just might have gotten a unusual 40%, or it could be that people who update the app the quickest, this is what they like, as opposed to people who update a little bit slower. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. I think this one diagram could be a PhD if you've got enough time and dedication. I don't know if I'm at that point yet, but if you feel you are, leave a comment down below. Now let's get to the relative points change. And again, Italy, the big red here, losing almost 1/3 of their points from the song change. And then the relative points gain, we can see Montenegro actually getting a nice little gain there at the bottom, increasing by 3.3. But yet really strange to see some countries losing and some countries gaining. Okay, let's go to the 20th country joining the table, and that is Iceland. It's Vibe singing Roa, and they entered into 16th place with 32,443 points, which is just around 3% of the total points available. So let's see how them entering affected the other 19 countries on the table. We can see here we've got around 20,000 people voting in total. The biggest points loss come from the top 6. Now this brings up what I brought into the thing, where we had the top 6 gaining, now with the top 6 losing. Could this actually be the difference between people who update the app early, they like the songs on the top 6, and then the people update the app later, because we've got an extra 10,000 people here. They don't like these top 6. They like the later stuff. They're a little bit more edgy. That's just what it's looking at, because really Iceland coming in 16th place only taking 30,000 points, it doesn't explain all this points loss at the top, because if Iceland were being ranked above all those countries all the time, they would be up the top themselves. So yes, this is more early people versus the late people, the early worms versus the night owls. And that's why it's good if generally we have like 20,000 plus people. But like I said, sometimes a new song comes in, I have to take the scores before the new entry comes in, otherwise the table resets. A little bit hard to discern what connection Iceland has, but one thing we'll note is that Ireland, being the biggest gainers, gaining 4,000 points and moving up 3 places from 16th to 13th. I feel like both of these songs are super fun, very kind of quirky, and a little bit, they both got Jedward vibes. Let's look at the relative points change, and we can see in the red, the biggest loser continues to be Italy, losing another 16% of their points, moving down to 17th. Another big hit for them. Don't worry, they do recover later on. My guess here as well is that a lot of Sanremo fans were very disappointed about Ollie withdrawing, and then they just kind of said, I'm not going to update the table for a while. They didn't love Lucio as much, and I think that they started updating it later because Lucio does start to climb back up again. Let's look and see who's the bluest, and again, Ireland improving their amount of points by 12.6. Slovenia increasing their amount of points by 11.3. So that's an interesting connection between Iceland and Slovenia. Could there be a little bit of man love there? And then the third biggest gainer was Estonia, increasing their amount of points by 7%. And again, I do see a connection between Iceland and Estonia. So it could be that Vibe fans joining, wanting to vote for their faves, also end up liking Ireland as well. Okay, let's introduce our 21st country. And this was on February 26 when Australia was released, and they joined the table in 11th spot with 50,627 points, which was 4% of the total. And we had around 22,000 people voting at this point in time. So a little bit more steady now. This is kind of similar numbers to Laughcraft, so we should get a better idea of just Australia's impact. And we can see biggest loser here is Spain. I have no idea why. I sat down and thought about this for a while, but I couldn't work it out. Losing 5,300 points. I don't know why. I didn't realize that. People who liked Spain liked Australia more, or it could just be the passing of time, who knows. But that caused them to move down 1 spot to 12th. Luxembourg as well, losing a huge amount of points, 5,000, causing them to move down 2 places to 10th. This would be the first time that they would move outside the top 10 since they've been on the scoreboard. Another song that's been on there since pretty much the start. And then our third biggest loser is Vibe from Iceland. Again, people always join the table a little bit higher and they start to move down. So that's expected. Albania gaining though, continuing to gather up more and more love. They gain 0.1%, which is around 900 points, closing the gap with Erika Wikman to 1.3. They want to edge towards that 1% if they can. Erika Wikman pretty much unaffected. She only lost 74 points, and we can see pretty much everybody else apart from Albania and Finland losing pretty sizable amount. Now let's look at the relative points change, because obviously not everyone started with the same amount of points to lose in the first place, and we can see it's pretty much blue down to red, which is pretty normal. We can see there's a couple of odd ones here. Greece losing more, losing up to 5% of their points. Belgium losing up to 5% as well. So kind of blue up the top as it should be. Down below we can see that Ukraine relatively unaffected. They lost only 900 points from Australia entering in. So Australia's kind of funny vibe, Gojo singing Milkshake Man, quite different from Ukraine talking about something a lot more serious. And again, we're seeing this shield effect for Ukraine, that they seem to be pretty protected. Their fans are sticking with them regardless. They continually are losing the least. We had the same thing with Southern Lights in 2023, seeing Aya, where Latvia, no matter who joined, just stayed put. And eventually they moved up the table because everyone else was losing and they were just staying. So could Ukraine actually start to rise up because of that? Yes, and the biggest points loss was Iceland losing 14% of what they had in the last table. Spain losing 9.5%. Again, I don't know why. And Slovenia losing 9.6%. Could that be another man love effect? Solo male artists sticking together? Who knows? Slovenia losing 1,500 points affects them obviously a lot more than it does the countries at the top, because Slovenia had such a small amount of points in the first place, and that's why they are so red. Let's add in our 22nd country, and it is Claude Singh C'est la vie. He entered into 7th place. Really fantastic start for him with 75,779 points, 6.2% of the total points available. And again, we have around 21,000 people voting, which is similar to the last one. So we get a really good indicator now of who overlaps with Claude. The biggest losers we can see here is Albania. Albania losing 7,400 points. So that's steady. thing they had of catching up with Finland getting to within 1.3% is reduced because Finland only lost 4,200 points, around 0.3. So now Finland extending their lead to 1.6%. We also have Belgium continuing their woes, losing 0.6, around 7,000 points, going down to 5% now. I wonder, is that an overlap on musical? Because Netherlands and Belgium have a similar aesthetic in general across the years. Could also just be that Belgium have been on the scoreboard so long that when a new, shinier country comes in, they get put up, and poor Belgium gets pushed down, just based on the fact that he's been there so well and people kind of getting a little bit more sick of the song. Keep in mind that people in Eurovision, all of the songs are going to be fresh to them. So that's another reason why Eurovision Scoreboard can give a slightly distorted view, because newer songs are much shinier. And then the third biggest loser is Latvia. And that causes them to move down 2 spots from 9th down to 11th. Keep in mind that they're part of this plateau. So very easy for these countries to move up and down with even small changes. But they lost around 6,400 points. So yes, Netherlands coming in seems to have a big overlap with Belgium, Latvia and Albania. But we did have one country gaining points, and that was Norway, gaining around 800 points, 0.1, and that caused them to jump up from 5th place to 4th place, overtaking Greece. So a bit of a slow burner song, no pun intended, but I have noticed that Norway has like slowly, gradually been climbing up. You know, when Norway joined the table, when there were 15 countries, they joined in 6th. And usually we see countries drop down, but actually Norway's climbed up to 4th now, which is really unusual. So lots of people feeling more love for Kyle Alessandro. Okay, let's have a look at the relative points. And we're seeing a general pattern of red down to blue. We've got a couple of outliers here though. Norway being very blue, increasing their amount of points by 1%. Belgium losing 10.5% of what the points that they had in the last graph. And Latvia losing 12%. But the reddest is down the bottom. Ireland and Armenia losing 15.6%, around 5,000 points each. And Slovenia down the bottom also losing around 15% as well. So I think that's just Netherlands being put up quite high on people's lists. People having Ireland, Armenia and Slovenia in their mid-table, and that causes them to move down a lot. Haven't seen too many people with Ireland or Armenia or Slovenia in their top 3. I don't think I've seen that once. If you're one of those people, give me a shout out down below. We need some love for these other countries as well, please. Overall, though, you can see that there is points being lost from everybody here. This is like pretty across the board. And I think that's down to Netherlands' broad appeal. You can see other than Norway, pretty much everybody losing more than 1,000 points, even Ukraine. So this just shows that this song has a super broad appeal. Fans of every single song also have this in their rankings as well. Okay, let's add in our 23rd country. It's Serbia, Prince singing Mila. This didn't have much of an effect because it entered in last place with 7,949 points. And this was an absolutely bizarre situation because I will usually update these tables a couple of times just to be safe. I'll kind of like do drafts on them. This final graph you're seeing is 21,500 people, but I would have taken 2 or 3 before that just to be safe until the next song finally drops. This was the first time I've ever done this where country lost points. So Serbia had around 9,000 points and they dropped down to 7,949. That has never happened before in around 200 or 300 updates that I've done. I think that was down to some controversial tweets and TikToks and whatnot that he put out on social media that really did not go down well in the community, and people just saying, nope, removing their points from Prince. So totally bizarre phenomena. A lot of Serbians very upset that this is kind of like their flop year they're feeling. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but yes, like this is so incredibly rock bottom. Good news for Clement, getting his first ever reprieve from being at the bottom of the scoreboard. So yes, there's a silver lining for everything, and Montenegro also taking one step away from being last. But overall, you can see the bottom 3 here, Montenegro, Slovenia and Serbia, all from Southeast Europe. This is not a great year for that region, apart from Albania and also to a certain extent Greece as well being at the top. So it's like you're either really, really good or you're right down the bottom sucking. Okay, so with Serbia coming in and taking up so little points, let's have a look at the pure points change, and we can still see there's quite a lot of movement here. I put this more down just to the passage of time. People just listening to songs. Serbia coming in and taking so few points. You can see they've only taken 8,000 and Eric has gained 8,000 alone. So it's more everyone's just ignoring Serbia and just kind of like bickering amongst themselves. So we can see Erica gaining a huge amount, around 8,355 points. everybody in the top 6 gaining points here. Again, there seems to be this thing of the top 6 taking points from the people lower down. It's the rich stealing from the poor. It's Elon Musk in a graph. Belgium continuing to lose another 4,000 points, around 0.3. They dropped down to 4.6 now. Netherlands losing 0.2, but this again is a recency bias thing I told you about. Still holding on 7th place with quite a big lead over Belgium. And then Luxembourg. So this is Benelux nightmare going on. Netherlands, Belgium and Luxembourg. Luxembourg losing 4,000 points, which is actually the most out of anyone, 0.3, and that causes them to drop down 2 places, finally out of the top 10. Latvia also dropping down 2 places to 13th. We can see a slightly unusual circumstance where Armenia have lost 3,400 points, but because they lost less than Ireland, they've jumped above. But yes, you need to pause this video and have a look at this. These are like crazy numbers. This for me is just the passage of time. Serbia had almost no effect, I don't think Serbia had much of an effect on anybody. Okay, let's look at the relative points change, and we can see lots of pluses up the top, despite a new country being added, which is really, really bizarre. Lots of blue. We can see the first unusual red is Belgium losing more than they should have, 6.5% of their points. Luxembourg, as I said before, biggest losers though being Armenia and Ireland. Montenegro surprisingly losing 10% of their points. You'd think if a lot of Serbians came on to vote for Prince, that Montenegro will get a bump. This for me indicates that not very many Serbians are behind this song. I'll do my Serbia song review eventually. I'm not in a rush to do it because I don't think many people are going to be watching it, to be honest. If a big flux of Serbians had come in, for example, last year with Romonda, which was a very beloved song in the country, I think we'd see a bump up for Montenegro as well. The fact that Montenegro have lost points implies to me a lot of Serbians have checked out, not interested. Also interesting to note at this point that in the bottom 10 countries, we only have 2 female artists. That is Ireland and Montenegro. Everyone else is a male artist. The flip side happens at the top, where we have the top 4 countries all have lead female vocalists. Obviously, we have Kole with Albania, but in terms of lead vocals, it's Beatrice. So yes, you can see, as I always say in these videos, there's a bias towards female artists. We can see this really heavy at the top. In actual Eurovision, it's the reverse. There's a little bit more of a bias towards men and a little bit less for females. So that's something to consider with this scoreboard as well. Okay, let's add in 3 countries at once. And now because this happened on a Super Saturday, an artist is picked. There's not enough time for the scoreboard to fill up with enough people before the next country comes in. So we get all 3 together. We had Germany entering in 9th with 69,161 points. That's 16th place. We had Denmark with 52,750. And in 24th place, continuing the streak of countries in Southeast Europe, and particularly in former Yugoslavia doing really, really poorly, we have Croatia with 18,659. That's Marco singing Poison Cake. Denmark is Cecile singing Hallucination, which I'm going to review very soon. I'm very keen to do that review. Okay, so let's look at how all 3 of these countries coming in impacted, and we can see a huge amount of red at the top, apart from Albania. So while Finland are losing 1.5%, 25,000 points approximately. That's how much Finland lost. Albania only lost 2,700. So these 3 countries coming in, hugely affecting Erika Wikman. Germ really unaffected, and you can see this lead that Finland has over Albania has reduced to only 0.5, the smallest it has ever been. Really, really exciting for Albania. Huge drop down here to 3rd place. Greece moving up 1 spot, but they're absolutely neck and neck with Malta. Both of them lost around 15,000 points. At this point now, this is the most amount of people that we're seeing in this entire video. It is 28,000 people. Again, this pattern of early people loving the top 6 and later people living the lower down rankings, we can see big points losses at the top, apart from Albania. Second biggest loser was Malta, losing 1%, around 16,000 points. And then we had Greece, Norway and Poland all losing between 14 and 15,000. Okay, who was not affected though? And we can see Estonia only losing 668 points. Armenia gaining 1,800 points. I do not know. Is that a connection with Croatia? I'm wondering, or is it a connection with Germany? I'm not sure, but they somehow managed to gain 1,000, or is it just these late people, the later people to do the rankings? That's the only gain, I believe. Ireland also barely losing anything, Montenegro losing nothing, and Slovenia losing nothing. So songs at the bottom not losing much. These songs at the top, they're losing huge amount of points. 25,000. That's absolutely crazy. You'd have to assume that the biggest person causing that will be Germany because they got the most points. But obviously Denmark got a pretty sizable amount as well. 52,000 is nothing to scoff at. So those two countries together managing to overtake many of the countries in the top six in tandem with these late voters who don't like the top six. Let's add in our final country for today, and that is Austria. It's JJ singing Wasted Love, and this romped into silver medal position with 113, 61 points. That's 9.4% of all the total points. Poor Albania doing all this work to slowly climb up on Finland, and then Austria comes in and ruins it all. This is less than the last graph. This is around 21,000 people, whereas the last one was 28,000. So we have lost around 7,000 people voting. And let's look at this points change, and we can see we actually have a country gaining points, and that is Netherlands gaining around 600. So this is building up a little bit of popularity as more people are listening to it. The second bluest country is Finland, only losing 800 points, which is very, very impressive from a song coming in into second place. That huge loss in the last graph. I think some people were like, whoa, 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 slow down. We love you, Erica. We just made a split decision. Could also be those extra 7,000 people who are later to vote don't like Erica that much, but they haven't voted in this graph. Biggest loser, we can see Belgium losing 9,000 points, Estonia losing 9,000 as well, causing them to drop down 5 places, and Albania being the biggest loser, losing over 10,000 points. Now I feel that is those 7,000 people who are voting late are going to come in and give much of those points back. So once we have all 37 countries, the numbers are just going to rise and rise and rise and rise. Obviously, I'm going to cover that later on in the season, towards mid, late March and early April. And when we get into the party season and we start to see some live performances, that's when it's really interesting, because it's not about, well, have these 7,000 people disappeared or are they coming back? They're there to stay. It's just people jiggling around their top 10s. Okay, let's have a look at the relative points change, and we can see a lot of blue up the top, not very affected, a lot of red down the bottom. Netherlands increasing their amount of points by 1%. Albania, the biggest hit, they lost 10% of their points, whereas Erica Vikaman was pretty unaffected. And then red down the bottom, we can see the biggest loser is Croatia, not surprising as they were new on the last one. Germany surprisingly only losing 3% despite being new on the last. So I think people actually, that's a bit of a grower. People are starting to listen to that and love it more. So although it does lose people from the recency bias, it's gaining a few new fans as well. And Denmark similarly, also only losing 5%. You can see they're very blue, where everyone else around them is red. So they actually moved up 3 spots from 16th to 13th, only losing 1,800 points, whereas everyone else lost more. So very interesting to see those. And I'm going to stop there for today. We do have more updates, but I don't want to overload you on one video. I want to split these up, and also want to split up my workload as well. My computer doesn't really like writing these files. In the next video, we will see the addition of Czechia and the UK. Then we'll see the addition of Sweden, which had a big effect. Then we'll see the addition of San Marino. Then we'll see the addition of Israel and Portugal. And finally, we'll see the addition of Switzerland. And then also Cyprus's song is coming tomorrow. So I might split those up into 2 videos. Lots of juicy stuff happening. I'm looking at this spreadsheet now. Lots of dark blues, lots of dark reds, lots of people fighting over points in Eurovision 2025. And we are going to have a new number 1. You probably know who it is, but I'm going to save it to you. But I'm going to save it for you for the next episode in case you aren't sure. Okay, so just to finish off, let's just zoom out and look at how these 27 countries were organized. And we can see Finland at the top, but Austria really close. Bit of a drop down to Albania, and then this huge cavernous drop down to Norway, Greece, and Malta, who are all super even. Small drop down then down to Poland, and then down to Netherlands, and then a big plummet down to Germany, Lithuania, and Belgium. And then we start to have a slow, gradual slope from Australia to Denmark to Latvia to Spain. Latvia and Spain are constantly switching. Every time I do my update, Latvia and Spain move, and I have to cut it and insert it. It's very annoying. I wish they would just make up their mind which one's better. Then we have Luxembourg and Estonia. Small drop down to Ukraine, who are going to have released their revamp in my next video. So will Montenegro. Then we have Armenia, Azerbaijan, Ireland, and Iceland sitting on their own little cute 4 plateau. And then it's a bit of a slippery slope down to Montenegro, Croatia, Slovenia, and Serbia having an absolute nightmare. The bottom 4 is all 4 of the former Yugoslav countries. Total another nightmare for them this year. Could we see a situation where none of them qualify to the final? Have to wait and see. In any case, what did you think about all my Eurovision Scoreboard updates? Are there any things that you noticed? Please leave me a comment in the comment section down below. Thank you to those who have been supporting me on PayPal and Buy Me Coffee. If you think that I need espresso macchiato after doing this video, I'll leave a QR code for you here and also a link in the description. Please help the channel reach 20,000 subscribers. We're so close, we can do it. And of course, thank you to my wonderful patrons for patronizing me from all around the world. On my Patreon, you can get some original audio and visuals. You can get some early releases. You can be in the credits. You can support the channel. But of course, thank you so much just for being here. I'm seeing you in another Eurovision analysis video very, very, very soon. Goodbye.